What if 3 decades of hands-on mastery could be erased with the stroke of a pen, relegating years of dedication to the scrap heap of efficiency targets? Picture a cavernous factory floor humming with mechanized precision, where a seasoned mechanic, his hands inked with grease and mapped by calluses, stands sidelined after 30 years of salvaging stalled engines and coaxing performance from raw metal. His toolbox, once a sacred trove of wrenches and torque wrenches he knew by feel, is now just another collection of relics gathering dust. Yet behind the plant's ruthless cost-cutting lies an untapped opportunity, a hidden prototype design for a game-changing fuel efficiency component yearning for a guiding hand. When an unannounced visitor arrives, not in a suit, but carrying a plan to merge innovation with craftsmanship, he unlocks the secret that expertise cannot be optimized away. Stay with us as one quiet intervention on the factory floor ignites a revival of human skill, reshaping both machines and lives. The assembly hall stretched like an empty cathedral of industry, its vast ceiling crisscrossed by riveted girders, high-arched trusses, and hanging fluorescent lamps that cast a clinical glare over idle machines and half-completed chassis. Robot arms and welding stations stood motionless along the production line, their cold steel surfaces reflecting puddles of motor oil and grease ingrained into perforated concrete floors. Conveyor belts, once pulsing with the rhythm of motion, lay motionless, their black rubber surfaces scuffed by decades of tire tracks. Overhead, a network of pneumatic tubes and chute systems traced labyrinthine paths across the rafters, a testament to the plant's ceaseless pursuit of precision and productivity. Amidst this industrial landscape stood a solitary figure whose presence seemed at odds with the stark sterility of the environment. He wore coveralls darkened by years of toil, streaked with the sheen of engine grease and the silt of metal filings. Silver threads fringed his temples and crisscrossed his scalp, marking the passage of time measured in oil changes and failed gear assemblies. His boots, once polished and new, now bore the patina of countless shifts, worn soles revealing the outline of toes, scuffed toe caps echoing the clang of dropped wrenches. A faded name patch stitched to his chest read simply mechanic, its letters frayed from decades of laundering and labor. Under the harsh overhead lights, the mechanic's hands, calloused, knuckled, and ringed with inked black lines where metal bit into skin, were still steady as ever, fingers flexing in a practiced readiness to straighten, tighten, and mend. Yet today his hands trembled not with anticipation, but with the weight of uncertainty. He stood before a polished desk of stainless steel and glass, the factory boss's office enclosed by walls of smoked plexiglass that reflected his own wary gaze. Behind the desk, the boss's posture was rigid and unyielding, shoulders squared in a borrowed authority that seemed synthesized from quarterly report graphs rather than earned through years on the floor. Without ceremony, the boss slid a crisp, white envelope across the desk. Its edges were pristine, its surface void of embellishment, marking the finality of its contents. The mechanic reached forward, the motion deliberate, and retrieved the envelope. Fingers that had once tuned complex engine calibrations now grappled with the simple act of unfolding paper. Within lay a stub of pay and a date of termination, the latter printed in heavy bold font that seemed to thud against his chest with each flash of fluorescent glare. No fine print clauses offered a promise of severance or a pathway out of this sudden void. Only the stark figures representing his last paycheck, trailing decimal points that hinted at benefits, abruptly halted. His shoulders sagged as he held the stub at arm's length, scanning the terse notation indicating the reason for release, efficiency targets. The phrase echoed in the cavernous hall beyond the glass walls, resonating against silent stamping presses and silent hydraulic lifts. Efficiency, in this liturgy of metrics, equated to the elimination of that which did not fit an optimized algorithm. Human skill, institutional memory, individual dedication. The boss, untouched by the scene's tension, tapped a key on his laptop, redirecting the monitor away from production performance charts and back to the morning schedule. In that gesture lay the unspoken decree. Productivity would continue, unaffected by the absence of the mechanic whose hands had once coaxed flawless motion from iron and rubber. Outside the office, the production team paused in subdued shock. Young technicians in neat blue uniforms hovered nearby, their eyes flicking between the glass walls and their own foot-tapped drills. Robotic welders stood like sentinels, their joints poised to resume duties at a flick of a switch. The conveyor belt's silent embrace held the ghostly outlines of vehicles in formation, frames awaiting the guiding touch of human expertise that had been dismissed with such brusque finality. The mechanic's departure would leave an invisible gap, a void in the heart of the assembly line where institutional knowledge and artisanal skill once intertwined. The boss rose and slipped on a tailored jacket, its fabric unblemished and crisp, signaling the end of the meeting. Behind him, digital clocks ticked off the time with mechanical precision, but the mechanic's mind measured hours by the stilled rhythm of his heartbeat. He pocketed the stub, turning his back on the boss's office as though retreating from a courtroom of metrics rather than a place of work he had known all his adult life. Stepping onto the production floor, he wiped his palm across the front of his coveralls, smearing the day's last traces of blue-gray grease into faded patterns. The hiss of hydraulic lifts and the clank of metal gears resumed behind him as the line restarted without pause. He walked past stations where younger hands calibrated engine controllers and refilled pneumatic hoses, each movement underscored by the quiet hum of machinery that felt strangely alien. At a station, the empty tool cart stood waiting, laden with wrenches and ratchets he would no longer lift. Above him, digital displays tracked cycle times and yield percentages, oblivious to the presence that had once optimized every figure they recorded. The mechanic raised a hand in a salute to the steel-clad expanse, a silent farewell to a place sculpted by decades of dedication. His face, creased with lines of experience and sculpted by countless hours bent over open engine compartments, held no bitterness, only the steady acceptance of a mandate passed down by efficiency formulas and cost-benefit analyses. He collected his wrench belt, tightened it around his waist for the final time, and turned toward the exit, where the sunlight of a new day welcomed him into uncertain freedom. As he crossed the threshold of the factory gates, the engines behind him roared back to life, their sound a lament for lost mastery, yet also a testament to the continuity of motion. 30 years of craftsmanship and identity faded into the shifting shadows of the plant's steel skeleton, left behind alongside the echo of battle-hardened footsteps on grease-slick floors. And though his uniform bore the stains of a lifetime's labor, his stride carried the memory of every revved engine and every triumphant repair, a legacy that no efficiency target could erase. In the quiet of his modest garage workshop, the veteran mechanic moved among familiar stations as if navigating a map of his own history. A single overhead bulb cast a muted glow over the cement floor, its surface mottled with oil stains from countless repairs. Along one wall, pegboards held an array of hand tools, wrenches, pliers, and screwdrivers worn smooth at the handles, each bearing the mechanic's initials in tiny scratched letters. Beneath the pegboards, a heavy workbench was cluttered with disassembled engine heads, pistons scored by heat, and coils of wiring that once threaded through complex control systems. The air held the sharp tang of solvent and the faint hum of fluorescent light above, a familiar scent that once signaled purpose and mastery. The mechanic's hands, calloused and stained with residual black grease, moved with deliberate care as he cleaned a bent valve stem with a wire brush. His touch was precise, fingers accustomed to the smallest tolerances, guiding the brush along worn metal until the surface gleamed. Yet beneath the steady motions lay a tremor of uncertainty, as though each component he restored served as a reminder of the bench from which he had been unceremoniously dismissed. He set the clean part on a magnetic tray and reached for a blueprint pinned to the board above. Yellowed paper etched with intricate diagrams of a custom camshaft profile he had once perfected. He traced the lines of that design with his fingertip, recalling the day he had watched the first prototype run smoothly transformation of raw metal into finely tuned motion under his direction. Nearby, a shelf held a stack of manual-sized awards, plaques engraved with titles like Outstanding Maintenance Excellence, 1995, and Lifetime Service Recognition, 2005. Their polished wood faces reflected the meager light, gathering dust like silent monuments to a career abruptly halted. Alongside them, family photographs captured moments of pride and joy. The mechanic standing beside his wife in a workshop doorway, the couple's children grinning while holding their first toy car engines, and a multi-generational portrait showing the family gathered at a backyard barbecue beside an old pickup truck he had restored from rust. These images, once sources of comfort, now felt like relics of an identity he feared slipping away. He paused and wiped his brow with the back of a stained sleeve, the motion revealing a collection of fine scars across his knuckles, battle wounds from stubborn nuts and jagged metal that had clung to his fingertips during years of labor. He turned to an engine block mounted on an adjustable stand and ran his finger through a pool of residual oil inside a cylinder bore. The smooth contour of the metal, polished by countless piston strokes, was something no machine learning algorithm could replicate, an echo of his expertise etched into steel. He closed his eyes briefly and inhaled deeply, the sense of diesel and motor oil stirring memories of long shifts under harsh factory lights, of the rhythmic clatter of tools, and the triumphant hiss of a successfully mended engine coming to life. With a measured sigh, he reached for a torque wrench resting in its case. His grip around the handle was instinctive, muscles remembering the tactile feedback that guided each turn to the precise foot-pound rating. He attached a new head gasket onto a manifold, aligning it with the mating surface as though performing a ritual. The gasket's crisp, unworn edges contrasted with the manifold's etched grooves, a pairing that symbolized renewal amid decay. Each bolt he tightened carried the weight of 1,000 mornings spent ensuring vehicles rolled smoothly from the assembly line, each revolution a testament to skill honed over decades. The radio in the corner crackled to life with a late-night news bulletin about the plant's recent cost-cutting measures, the announcer's voice distant and clinical. The mechanic adjusted the dial, setting it to static before the broadcast concluded, refusing to let that sterile tone permeate his sanctuary. He set down the wrench and leaned against the workbench, arms crossed over his chest where a faded logo of the plant still showed on his t-shirt beneath the coveralls. His reflection in the window pane revealed eyes deep with resolve, a determination to prove that experience and hands-on knowledge still mattered in an age of automation and optimization. Outside, the neighborhood lay dark and still, but inside the workshop, the steady rhythm of his breathing mingled with the soft drip-drip of leftover coolant from a nearby radiator test. In that space of steel, oil, and memory, he vowed to reclaim the mastery that had been cast aside, to forge new innovations from the echoes of his expertise. The sun had barely cleared the horizon when the veteran mechanic turned the key in the lock of the factory side gate for what he believed would be his final visit. The early morning sky was streaked with pale orange and lavender, a quiet prelude to the bustle that would soon fill the assembly hall. He pushed open the gate and wheeled his toolbox across the dew-damp pavement toward the tool storage shed, the familiar click of its latches echoing in the still air. Each step toward the shed felt like a farewell, the final day to gather the tools he had relied on for 30 years of service. But as he rounded the corner of the main building, his heart skipped at the sight of a sleek black SUV parked amid the line of standard-issue company vans. The vehicle's polished surface reflected the first rays of sunlight like a mirror, its tinted windows an unexpected anomaly on the well-worn lot. The mechanic paused, a mixture of curiosity and suspicion tightening his chest. He left his toolbox beside a marked parking spot and approached the SUV, noting the subtle gleam of chrome accents and the absence of any corporate logo. Nearby, the air compressor station and spare part crates stood as silent witnesses to the arrival of an unusual guest. As he drew closer, the rear door of the SUV glided open with a soft pneumatic hiss, and out stepped a man whose reputation needed no introduction. Dressed in a casual yet purposeful ensemble, a dark leather jacket over a simple shirt, jeans belted at the waist, Keanu Reeves moved with the assurance of someone accustomed to commanding attention through presence rather than title. Reeves's gaze shifted from the mechanic's toolbox to the older man himself, recognizing the lines of diligence etched into his face. Without delay, Reeves extended a firm hand, and the mechanic, surprise coloring his cheeks, accepted the handshake. The grip was confident but warm, conveying respect rather than superiority. Reeves's eyes met the mechanic's with genuine attentiveness, as though he had come not to dismiss but to truly listen. In the background, the factory's vast doors stood half open, revealing the skeletal framework of conveyor belts and welding stations that lay dormant until the lunch bell whistle summoned them to life. Reeves motioned toward the interior of the plant, and the mechanic followed, his boots echoing on the concrete floor as he navigated past rows of silent machinery. Reeves's footsteps were light yet purposeful, the subtle thrum of his presence cutting through the hush. At the foot of the main assembly line's control console, Reeves paused and retrieved a slim portfolio from the SUV's trunk. The portfolio's unassuming leather cover bore no insignia, but within lay documents and glowing renderings of a new fuel efficiency component, an advanced injector nozzle designed to reduce emissions while boosting output. Reeves laid out the schematics across a stainless steel work table, the crisp white pages contrasting sharply with the grime of the console. The mechanic drew closer, his breath catching as he studied the precision-etched lines and detailed tolerances. Reeves watched the mechanic's eyes narrow in that familiar way, marking a mind at work. He then turned and spoke with quiet conviction, offering the mechanic the opportunity to lead a select team tasked with bringing this innovation from blueprint to reality. No mention of hierarchy or position. Instead, an appeal to mastery and experience. Reeves's voice carried the gravity of belief rather than command, an invitation rather than an ultimatum. The component would be critical to the plant's next generation of vehicles, but without the hands and mind of someone who understood metal's temperament, the project would stall in theoretical limbo. The mechanic's initial shock yielded to a stir of cautious excitement. He ran calloused fingers over the paper, recalling the tactile feel of blueprints he had once drawn by hand and the soft hum of prototype engines coming alive under his adjustments. He looked at Reeves's steady gaze and felt a resurgence of purpose ignite within him. The plant's future, challenged by the same drive for efficiency that had cast him aside, now depended on his unique expertise. Even as the steady hum of the plant's compressors revived around them, the two men stood united by a commitment to marry innovation with craftsmanship. Reeves then surveyed the dormant production line, gesturing toward one of the nearby side garage bays. The space, already cleared and illuminated by portable work lights, awaited assembly benches and test rigs. Reeves outlined a plan. Vintage machines repurposed to prototype the injector nozzles, coordination with young engineers eager to apply fresh theoretical knowledge, and daily progress reports to the executive office. The mechanic imagined guiding a team of apprentices, teaching them how to listen to metal, measure tolerances by feel, and coax performance from precision components, skills he feared extinct but now desperately needed. The morning air thickened with possibility as Reeves and the mechanic shook hands again, their alliance sealing the unexpected intervention. In that handshake lay the promise of a second act, a chance not simply to reclaim a lost identity, but to redefine the plant's trajectory through a fusion of seasoned skill and forward-thinking design. And as they stepped together into the side garage bay, where workstations stood ready, the mechanic's toolbox waiting to be unpacked once more, the echoes of his decades of expertise found a new resonance, carrying the weight of the past into an era of innovation shaped by respect, collaboration, and the unyielding belief that no mastery should ever be deemed obsolete. Under the bright glare of halogen work lamps in the side garage, the veteran mechanic and Keanu Reeves embarked on the first phase of transforming concept into reality. The walls, once bare concrete, now bore freshly mounted white bards covered in crisp, blue ink sketches, cross-sectional diagrams of an advanced injector nozzle, annotated with dimensions, flow trajectories, and heat dissipation channels. Reeves stood to one side, observing the mechanic's steady hand as he refined details. A slight taper here to improve atomization, a reinforced lip there to contain pressure spikes. Each line added by the mechanic's pen resonated with decades of hands-on experience, the kind of tacit knowledge that no algorithm could replicate. Around the work table, a cadre of young engineers gathered, their bright safety vests and ID badges marking them as the next generation of industrial innovators. Their eyes tracked every movement, their fingers poised over tablets ready to capture notes. These engineers, fresh from universities and technical institutes, brought theoretical prowess and advanced simulation skills to the project. Yet it was the mechanic's deft touch, measuring tolerances by feel and listening for the slightest irregularity in a component's surface that held them wrapped. Reeves moved among them with unobtrusive encouragement, nodding appreciatively at their questions and guiding them to test rigs when curiosity demanded a hands-on demonstration. With the whiteboard session concluded, the mechanic shifted to the workbench where an array of precision tools awaited. Micrometers, dial indicators, and torque wrenches calibrated to 1/10 of a pound-foot. Reeves retrieved a stack of prototype cartridges, cylindrical steel blanks machined to approximate dimensions, and placed them before the mechanic. Under the garage's bright lights, the mechanic selected the first blank and secured it in a lathe retrofitted for small batch production. The lathe's controls hummed as the metal spun, the mechanic's hands coaxing the cutting tool along gently to carve the initial contours. Sparks flew as slivers of steel curled away, and the room filled with the rhythmic pulse of the machine. Once the basic form emerged, the mechanic transferred the partially turned blank to the milling station where precise slots and channels were cut. Reeves stood by, ready to fetch blueprints or adjust fixture settings when needed. In the background, the young engineers rotated between the CNC monitoring station and a computer terminal running flow dynamic simulations. Live readings from a temporary flow bench projected onto a nearby monitor, correlating predicted performance with early physical prototypes. Data points flickered across the screen, pressure differentials, nozzle throat velocities, and fluid temperature variances. Every discrepancy prompted a new iteration, an adjustment to the taper, a recalibration of the inlet angle, until the prototype approached the performance benchmarks set by the simulation. Throughout this process, Reeves made discreet calls to executive offices via video conference. Through an overhead projector, the latest CAD models and prototype photos beamed onto a corner of the garage wall. Plant executives, watching from distant boardrooms, leaned forward in their seats as Reeves highlighted the projected gains. A projected 12% increase in fuel efficiency, a 15% reduction in particulate emissions, and a potential extension of service intervals by up to 20%. The combination of quantitative data and the mechanic's real-time craftsmanship left decision-makers leaning towards swift approval. By mid-afternoon, the prototype stood fully assembled on the test rig, a stainless steel manifold with gleaming nozzles arrayed like polished lenses. Reeves donned safety glasses and signaled the lead engineer to initiate the test sequence. Valves hissed open, fuel surges with precise pressure ramp-up, and the rig's sensors recorded performance across the operational envelope. The first burst of data confirmed the mechanic's instincts: stable atomization at lower pressures, smooth flow curves without cavitation, and consistent spray patterns across multiple cycles. Applause rippled among the assembled team, the sound echoing off the concrete walls and overhead trusses. Reeves smiled as he clapped the mechanic on the back, the gesture resonating with mutual respect. The board of executives, now on the verge of green-lighting the component for full-scale production, prepared to finalize budgets and schedule line modifications. Meanwhile, the young engineers began drafting the next round of revisions. Minor tweaks to the nozzle's exit geometry and microfiltration pathways, already envisioning the road to mass manufacture. In that side garage, Under the unblinking glow of halogen lamps and the hum of machines revived by renewed purpose, the assembly line's lifeblood pulsed once more. The veteran mechanic's expertise, coupled with Reeves's unwavering belief in human potential, had breathed new vitality into a process once deemed obsolete. As the final test data chart emerged on the monitor, the prototype's metrics aligned with those etched in early blueprints, marking the successful transition from sketch to test rig. And so, with the line poised for revival, a testament to the synergy of hands-on mastery and forward-thinking vision, the plant's future gleamed with the promise of innovation reborn. The roar of machinery fell to a hush as the plant's main assembly line came to a precise halt. The conveyor belts stilled mid-stride, and the robotic welding arms pausing in suspended arcs. Under the stark overhead lights, the veteran mechanic stood at the line's control station alongside Keanu Reeves, observing the moment with a measured anticipation born of countless trials. Today was the culmination of weeks of iterative prototyping, computer simulations, and careful handcrafting of injector nozzles. A designated section of the line had been outfitted with quick-change fixtures to allow seamless integration of the newly developed component. Across the hall, supervisors and technicians gathered at the perimeter, faces reflecting the electric mix of curiosity and cautious optimism that accompanies any major technological transition. At the signal of a lead engineer's nod, the line restarted in self-paced steps. The bare chassis glided forward, passing under a series of robotic arms that once sealed each weld with uniform precision. Now, as the chassis approached the new integration station, a worker pressed a foot pedal, and recessed trays lifted the next stage assembly to a comfortable height. Reeves and the mechanic together guided the insertion of the prototype fuel efficiency unit, its gleaming contours and delicate tolerances contrasting with the plant's industrial grit. Bolts, torqued within spec by a robotic arm programmed with the mechanic's exacting parameters, dove into their threaded sockets with precise hums. The component's inlet ports aligned with the engine manifold, and pneumatic clamps snapped into position, holding the nozzle assembly securely in place. As the chassis resumed its journey down the line, sensors began to record operational data, pressure readings, flow dynamics, exhaust composition, and acoustic signatures. A monitor overhead displayed live comparisons between the legacy component's performance curves and those of the new prototype. Within moments, the screen illuminated with green indicators, improved atomization efficiency, a 10% increase in combustion stability, and a 20% reduction in harmful particulate emissions. The room's ambient hum swelled into a measured crescendo as the next chassis bore the same component, this time tracking even more refined metrics. By the fifth cycle, average cycle times had improved, energy consumption per unit dropped, and emissions gauges dipped into newly compliant ranges, data points that confirmed the breakthrough's efficacy. A stirring murmur rippled through the gathered workers as they witnessed quantifiable proof of their collective efforts. Production engineers exchanged high fives, electricians patted control panels in gratitude, and quality control inspectors nodded with satisfied approval as they cross-checked printed logs. Reeves clapped his hands once, a firm gesture meant to punctuate the moment's significance, and the plant's overhead lights seemed to brighten in response. The veteran mechanic, standing beside Reeves, allowed a rare, unguarded smile to spread across his grease-smudged face. His eyes shone with pride, reflecting both the success of the technology and the validation of his decades of experience. In one seamless movement, the component had married old-school craftsmanship with advanced engineering, a testament to the enduring value of human expertise in an automated era. From the control station, the factory boss emerged through the hiss of hydraulic doors, his tailored suit replaced by a more practical vest and safety glasses that marked him as both overseer and participant. The boss's posture, once rigid and impersonal in the face of cost-cutting measures, now softened as he approached Reeves and the mechanic. He extended a hand to the mechanic and then enveloped him in a hearty backslap, a gesture that resonated louder than any corporate memo. The boss's gratitude was unmistakable, He acknowledged the mechanic's ingenuity in front of the assembled workforce. His words carried not through a scripted speech, but through an authentic expression of respect. In that moment, the hierarchy that had once relegated the mechanic to an outsider's shadow collapsed, replaced by a genuine recognition of skill and dedication. Without hesitation, the boss offered the mechanic a new role as lead mentor in the plant's R&D division, a position designed to harness his wealth of tacit knowledge and guide young engineers through the complexities of hands-on problem-solving. Around them, applause swelled into a standing ovation, resonating from the far end of the hall to the polished railings overlooking the mezzanine. Reeves stepped to the side, allowing the spotlight to rest on the mechanic, whose weathered hands now held the respect of everyone present. The apprentice engineers clustered nearby, their eyes alight with the prospect of learning from a living legend rather than from textbook instructions alone. As the celebration continued, the assembly line resumed its rhythmic pulse, each vehicle now outfitted with a breakthrough component, marking the start of a new production era. The mechanic, standing amid colleagues who once questioned his future, felt a renewed sense of purpose. Reeves, having witnessed the transformative power of collaboration between seasoned expertise and bold vision, slipped quietly out of the frame, his mission accomplished. In the symphony of restarted machinery and heartfelt applause, the plant's revival resonated as both a technical triumph and a triumph of human spirit, an enduring reminder that true innovation is born when respect for people and proficiency in process unite. In a brightly lit training bay carved from an unused corner of the factory floor, rows of sturdy workbenches stood ready, each outfitted with vices, torque wrenches, diagnostic meters, and partially disassembled engine heads waiting to be reassembled. At the front of the bay, a raised platform served as the mechanic's podium, its surface marred by decades of scratches and oil stains. There, the veteran mechanic stood tall in his grease-darkened overalls, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms etched with veins and fine scars, each one a testament to countless hours spent coaxing precision from metal and fuel. Around him, a circle of apprentices, recent graduates and entry-level engineers, gathered with notebooks, tablets, and pens poised, their faces reflecting a mixture of eagerness and respect. The mechanic's hands moved with purposeful grace as he lifted a small fuel injection component from a bench. Under the glare of adjustable task lights, he turned it slowly, allowing the apprentices to observe the interplay of machined surfaces and tight tolerances. With a measured gesture, he pointed to a microscopic burr at the edge of a nozzle tip, an imperfection that, left unchecked, could disrupt the entire combustion process. Without uttering a single word, he removed a precision deburring tool from his belt, guiding its edge across the metal with a rhythm born of instinct and practice. The apprentices leaned forward, absorbing the silent choreography, their own hands itching to try the method under his watchful eye. Behind them, industrial fans stirred the warm air, carrying the faint scent of motor oil and machine coolant. Tool cabinets lined the perimeter, their doors opened to reveal drawers labeled for drills, reamers, and torque adapters. Every tool chosen for a specific purpose. Magnetic strips held rows of spanners and feeler gauges, while a large whiteboard displayed flow charts of the component's assembly process alongside equations calculating fuel-air ratios. All around, the hum of active production could be heard through open doors, robotic arms welding frames and conveyor belts shuttling chassis toward their final form. Yet here in the training bay, the pace was guided by the mechanic's deliberate cadence rather than the relentless tick of automation. As the mechanic completed the finishing pass on the nozzle, he placed it gently into a specialized test chamber bench. Without speaking, he beckoned a young engineer forward. The apprentice approached with careful steps, donned protective goggles, and took hold of a precisely calibrated torque wrench. Under the mechanic's steady gaze, the apprentice applied the tool to the assembly, following the torque sequence etched into a laminated card clipped to the bench's edge. The quiet click of the wrench at each calibrated increment echoed across the bay, a small triumph of human-machine collaboration. When the apprentice set the wrench down, the mechanic gave a subtle nod of approval, his eyes gleaming with pride at the seamless transfer of knowledge. From the back of the bay, Keanu Reeves observed the unfolding scene, leaning against a steel support column in casual attire that contrasted with the apprentice's safety gear. He watched the mechanic's measured instruction and the apprentice's growing confidence, forming a silent smile that spoke of satisfaction and hope. Reeves's presence required no ceremony. His quiet attention underscored the significance of the moment without overshadowing the veteran's role. In the background, supervisors and R&D personnel consulted clipboards, preparing to review the apprentice's progress and integrate their work into the next phase of prototype development. As the session progressed, the mechanic guided his students through diagnostic routines, pressure tests on fuel lines, acoustic analysis of injector sprays, and thermal imaging to verify heat dispersal during high-load cycles. Each procedure unfolded as a demonstration of applied theory made tangible through skilled hands. Apprentices swapped roles, some measured flow rates with precision manometers, others recorded data on digital tablets. The mechanic moved among them, offering a guiding hand on shoulder straps, a pointed finger at tunnel valves, or a gentle adjustment of wrist angles when tightening fasteners. No raised voices, no lectures, only the steady pulse of mentorship expressed through action. By the end of the day's session, benches were cleared, prototypes repositioned on rolling carts, and data files uploaded to the plant's central server. The apprentices filed out with newfound confidence radiating in their stride. The mechanic remained on the platform, surveying the workshop with a quiet satisfaction, his gaze resting on each empty workstation as if bidding farewell to a productive symphony. Reeves stepped forward, placing a respectful hand on the mechanic's shoulder, and together they watched the sun begin its descent through the bay's high windows. In that fading light, the mechanic's legacy, once threatened by efficiency-driven neglect, stood renewed through the eager hands of a new generation. The torch had been passed. A lifetime of skill now served as the bedrock for tomorrow's innovations, each spark of ingenuity ignited by a mentor who refused to let mastery fade into obsolescence.